Welcome, my little beauties, to another cross-tag battle video. Real quick before the video starts, sorry for the bad video quality. Ever since I updated OBS, I've been having trouble with recording. This is a new series I'm hoping to start where I analyze and break down characters in fighting games and give combo tutorials. Today I am happy to bring you a character profile on Nine the Phantom. With the recent release of a new character DLC pack, we received Nine the Phantom, and I gotta say, this was one of the ones I was the most hyped for. It's been quite a while since I've played the original BlazBlue games, but back when I did, Nine was one of my favorite characters. Though, however, her unique mechanics make her a little more difficult for beginners to pick up. But fear not, your goddess is here to break down the moveset of Nine the Phantom and elaborate on how she likes to play. So whether this is your introduction to the character, or you've played her in the original games and want to see how it translates, you've come to the right place. Without further ado, let's talk about her specials. Nine's gimmick is her unique element gauge. Now there are a lot of specials that revolve around the element gauge, and it'll take a while to explain, so let's go over her other specials first. Nine's dash is different from other characters. Instead of running up or backdashing, Nine will do a short teleport called Step. Since it is a teleport, it can pass through enemies and is invulnerable for a certain time during the animation. Additionally, Step can be cancelled into itself during its animation. Step can be performed forward and backward on the ground, and forward, backward, and down in midair, and can be cancelled in any direction. By inputting back and A, you perform Nine's anti-air attack. This attack is invulnerable to high attacks, making it safe on jumping opponents. Also, this move functions as a launcher, sending your opponent into the air, allowing you to follow up with an air combo or just an auto combo. Nine's reversal action is called Flax Nurture, and is performed by hitting A and D. Nine will form a barrier around herself, damaging the opponent. This attack can also be performed when in the air. Nine's first special is called Crimson Raider, and is performed by inputting quarter circle backward and A. Nine will turn her body into fire and dash toward her opponent, exploding on contact. This attack is great for closing in on your opponent when Step is too risky. It covers a pretty good distance and can be invaluable against opponents that like to keep their distance. This attack can also be used in the air. Nine's next attack is called Moveset Roar, and is performed by inputting quarter circle backward and B. Nine will duck low and summon a giant leg to kick her opponent into the air. Since Nine ducks low, this attack is invulnerable to high attacks during that time. This is only true for the grounded version, however. This attack can be used as a counter to an overhead or a mix-up on a low-blocking opponent. Her next attack is called Scarlet Vein, and is performed by inputting quarter circle backward and C with 1 bar of meter. Nine will summon a giant fist to punch her opponents, sending them flying. It will then automatically follow up with a second attack to intercept them in the air, sending them to the ground. This attack will also end in a wall bounce. This attack will home in on the opponent fairly well, hitting them even if they're all the way across the screen, and it makes sense since it costs 1 bar of meter to use. As long as they aren't moving too quickly, this attack will probably hit. The fist is invulnerable to projectile attacks while it's active. This attack can also be performed in the air, however the second hit will not happen. Now on to Nine's element gauge. When Nine hits the opponent with certain attacks or forces them to block them, she increases her element gauge. It's not too hard to figure out which ones fill up the gauge. Pretty much any normal that has an elemental effect will fill the gauge, so as long as you do even just auto combos, you should have no trouble filling it up. The gauge can be used to perform certain attacks depending on how much of the gauge is filled. Inputting these attacks will drain all of the element gauge that is currently filled. Depending on how much of the element gauge is filled up, certain attacks will become enhanced. Having your gauge filled will enhance the end of your auto combos and your jumping C. Performing these enhanced attacks do not affect the element gauge, so feel free to use them. The first attack that Nine can perform involving the gauge is called Everlasting Shorel, and is performed by inputting quarter circle forward and A, B, or C, while Nine's element gauge is at 0. Nine will summon a fork-like construct to stab her opponent. This attack is meant to be used at close range and is fairly quick to activate. Regardless of what button you press to initiate the attack, it will always end exactly the same. This attack can be used on the ground or in the air. 9's next element attack is Amethyst of Annihilation and is performed by inputting quarter circle forward and A while the element gauge is at less than half. 9 will shoot a slow-moving electrical ball that travels almost full screen. This is a fairly good zoning attack and can also be used to apply pressure to the opponent. This attack can be used on the ground or in the air. 9's next attack is called Citrine of Change and is performed by inputting quarter circle forward and B when the element gauge is less than half charged. 9 will summon a crystal in front of her to block incoming attacks. If it hits the opponent, it will deal damage. Citrine of Change activates automatically when you take projectile damage. This attack can be performed on the ground or in the air. 9's next attack is called Androdite of Accord and is performed by inputting quarter circle forward and A when the element gauge is more than half charged. 9 throws a ball that explodes and sends beams of energy horizontally and vertically from its position. By holding A after casting it, you can control the flight of the orb before it explodes. This is not only a good attack for zoning and pressure, it can also be used to control the field and punish an opponent's attempts to get close. This attack can be used on the ground or in the air. Her next attack is called Morganite of Malice and is performed by inputting quarter circle forward and B when the element gauge is more than half charged. 9 will throw a large seed at the ground in front of her. Moments later, large vines will burst from the ground, hurting the opponent. In the ground version of this attack, the vines hit low on the first attack, so you can use it to mix up your opponent by casting it and then jumping in with an overhead since they can't block both. This attack can be used on the ground or in the air. 9's next attack is called Tophite of Temptation and is performed by inputting quarter circle forward and A when the element gauge is at max. 9 will summon a sprite that will attack the opponent 3 times. The first attack is diagonally down from the front, the second attack is from directly behind the opponent, and the third attack comes from directly above the opponent. This can be used to apply a lot of pressure, especially on block string, because it'll temporarily turn the fight into a 2v1 in your favor. This attack can also be used on the ground or in the air. 9's next attack is called Uvarovite of Undoing, and is performed by inputting quarter circle forward and B when the element gauge is at max. 9 will create a ball of thunderclouds and hurl it into the air over the opponent. It will then create a circle on the ground. This circle will slightly track the opponent. Moments later, anything within the circle will be showered by a storm of meteors. This is good for pressuring players that like to be overly defensive, as well as for dealing additional damage in a combo if you time it right. This attack can be used on the ground or in the air. 9's last special is known as Nephrite of Nullification and is performed by inputting quarter circle forward and C when the gauge is more than 0. Nephrite of Nullification will attach an explosive magic circle to the opponent which will detonate after a few seconds. This attack will use all of the element gauge currently built, and the more the element gauge is filled up when you use it, the more damage it'll do. This attack has a secondary version called Nephrite of Nullification Dual, which can be used after casting the original version. By spending 1 bar of meter, you can make the circle explode immediately, making it more easy to finish a combo with. Now that we've gone over 9's specials, let's go over her supers. 9's first super is called Flame Punisher and is performed by inputting quarter circle forward and B and C. 9 will launch massive beams of energy at her opponent, the first coming from her fist and the second coming from her leg. These beams travel full screen horizontally. This super can only be done on the ground. 9's second super is called Azurite Inferno and is performed by inputting quarter circle backward and B and C. 9 will bring her leg down in an axe kick, causing a small wave of fire on the ground near her. If the opponent is hit by either her leg or the fire, they will be caught in a torrent of fire and 9 will proceed to spear them with magic arrows. This attack actually does more damage depending on how much of the element gauge is filled. If the gauge is less than half, the enemy will be caught and hit by 3 arrows horizontally. If the gauge is more than half, the opponent will be caught in a much larger flame and hit by 6 arrows horizontally. If the gauge is full, the opponent will be caught in a blistering column of fire and hit by 7 arrows horizontally, diagonally upward, and diagonally downward. Using this super will drain the element gauge completely. And last but not least, we come to 9's Astral Finish. Her Astral Finish is called Colorless Void. 9 will summon a magic circle on the ground. If the enemy is caught in the circle, the attack will play out. Magma will spout from the circle and a magic entity will burst from the magma and swallow the opponent whole. The entity will then explode into a pillar of fire as 9 flies into the sky. She will cast gigantic magic circles in the sky, summoning countless meteors to pummel her opponent, obliterating them and the surrounding area, leaving nothing but a raging hellstorm in its place. Now we can move on to her auto combos. As far as auto combos go, when you mash A, it looks like this. And when you mash B, it looks like this. 9 also has a third auto combo performed by mashing back and A, and it looks like this. So now that we know 9's moves, here are some tips on how to use them. 9 can be a little difficult to pick up if you're a beginner due to her unique element gauge and her movement abilities, but that's where her other abilities come in. 9's movement can be one of the most difficult things to get used to when playing her for the first time. As tempted as you may be to spam step, try not to do it too often. If you try to step to close in on a competent player, they'll most likely punish you. If you're having trouble getting close to your opponent or you're scared to use step, then Crimson Raider is an invaluable move for closing in on your opponent. It moves in fast and its recovery isn't too long. However, intermediate players will be able to react to a whiff and punish you. If you have some gauge, you can also use some of your zoning abilities to cover your movement. Androdite of Accord and Amethyst of Annihilation are really good for this. As long as you've landed a hit, you should have enough meter to use Amethyst, so it becomes an extremely useful tool for closing in. If you're having trouble getting in, you could also play a little more defensively, baiting your enemies to come to you and countering them when they get close. Moves like Citrine and Morganite really make this easier, and it's a totally viable option. Plenty of her abilities can be used to apply good pressure, and she can perform decent air combos too. Some of her air combos are easy enough to be performed even if you are a beginner. Her supers can be used at a range and up close, so she can deal good damage from any range. 9's arsenal revolves around the element gauge, so to use her to her fullest you're going to have to get close. However, don't be reckless and just rush in because of that. 9 still has some good zoning skills, especially if you've got some gauge. Use these skills to create openings so you can close in and initiate a combo. Be sure to manage your gauge. Don't just spam abilities without knowing what you're doing. If you mindlessly use an Amethyst just for the damage, you may not have enough gauge for an Androdite when you really need it to close in or counter an oncoming attack. Keeping track of the gauge can be a little overwhelming for new players, but if you keep up the practice, playing 9 will make you a force to be reckoned with, and opponents will have to stay on their toes at any range. And with that, I think I'll end this character breakdown. Thank you for watching my character profile on 9 the Phantom. I've been wanting to talk about Cross-Tag Battle for a while, and with the recent release of a bunch of new DLC characters, of which almost all of them I was extremely excited for, I thought it'd be a really good idea to do breakdowns of some of the characters. I mean, if no one else is gonna do it, might as well be me, right? I'm planning to do quite a few more of these, so if you like this kind of thing, give the video a like and comment on who you'd like to see me break down next. Thank you all so much for watching. I am your goddess, Crimson Reapress, and I'll see you next time.